This is I'm sorry, we'll start that over. The recording has started. It is 4 o'clock on Thursday, August 12th, 2021. This is a called special meeting of the GBC EDC. I will do roll call. I will call the names for attendance as well as votes when we get to that. I'm going to go in alphabetical order. Roll call. Mr. Bond.
I'm here.
Ms. Collard. Mr. Kroll. Ms. Johannes.
Present.
Mr. Wyrick.
Present.
And I am here. That's 4 out of 6, actually out of 7. So we do have a quorum. We're going to skip item 2, the invocation and pledge of allegiance, since we're meeting via Zoom. Item 3, citizens' comments. Received a notice from Ms. Rankin. She wanted to comment on item 4, which will be up next. Ms. Rankin, you have the floor. You're limited, I will remind you, to 3 minutes. No action may be taken on this. Ms. Rankin?
There we go. Thank you. The reason I wanted to visit with all of you today is because I'm familiar with performance agreements done by the EDC, and I'm also familiar with performance agreements that have been done by our city. And one of the few things, or several of the things, that I find not included in your current performance agreement are critical to your success. And I wanted to bring these to your attention because I think you need to look hard at what is missing. Let me give you an example. They're going to need a large water easement because there's going to be a high demand for water and water pressure. Therefore, they're going to have to bring infrastructure in for water and sewer. Now, there's going to need to be an easement, and most likely that easement is going to have to be allocated in some form or fashion and probably purchased, or else it's going to have, I know you're going to be dedicating some of this stuff, but you haven't talked with the city, not the city, the freshwater supply district, to discuss how much that's going to cost and who will be taking care of those expenses. They can be divided between the developer and the city and the EDC, or they can be at the expense of the city or the EDC or the developer. But those haven't been discussed. So your water and sewer agreements need to be done before you go into a performance agreement. And make sure that you understand who is going to provide the cost on any and all easements, detention ponds, drainage, offsite and on-site. You need to be thinking about which party is actually going to be paying for these things that are offsite. You're going to have impact statements that are going to show how much repair is going to be required after you have your construction. You haven't talked to anybody about how much that would cost, and you haven't gone into any discussions with your developer to talk about trying to split those costs. So I'm going to recommend to you that today you hold off on approving this so that you can go back to the drawing board and hopefully come up with some more concrete decisions and agreements and put them all into your performance agreement before you get started. I have one that's from Silverleaf, and you all are welcome to have a copy of it. I sent it to the admin and to Joe, and I would like for you to look at what that one looked like before you make a decision on this particular performance agreement. If you have any questions, let me know.
Ms. Rankin, you're about out of time.
That's fine, I'm finished.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Mayor, you're interim acting director of the ED. Did you want to say anything or address that?
Love to. This performance agreement, what we're doing today is to form a partnership. What Ms. Rankin is talking about today is deciding who's going to pay for what and when. the partnership is paying for these items. Our limit on the partnership is $2 million. That has been spoken by Mr. Haynes in our session that we set in, and that when this was first voted on. The other thing I like to point out is Ms. Rankin did come into the EDC office when this project first came about and announced that she did have a client that wanted that property. So it's not surprising to me that she's wanting to stop this. You know, guys, y'all been through this a number of times. The only reason we're bringing it back this time is that Mr. Lawrence felt like the meeting was not called properly, which it wasn't. And so we had to bring it back just to ratify the vote. If y'all want to go back through all this again, we can. I see that Stephen is on the phone. But today we're talking about forming the partnership, and that's what the performance agreement spells out. It spells out the percentages. It spells out how much money and what we're putting into it. Their clawbacks are in there that if YNS doesn't proceed, we pull all of our stuff back out. So, you know, the attorney has gone through this how many times now? Robin, you're on mute.
Her mic's off.
Yeah.
At least 4 or 5, but I probably have to go back and count.
Yeah. City attorney's gone through it and they both have blessed it. So I'll leave it with y'all. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Rankin, for your comments. The Mayor pointed out that I felt that the meeting was called improperly, and he agreed that it was. Just for clarification, since that was brought out, the previous special meeting held last Friday, in which Mr. Wyrick was not in attendance. He was in the hospital still. I was not in attendance. I was out of town. We are currently operating under the 2019 bylaws. Under the 2019 bylaws, the president and 2 board members are required to call a special meeting. That's how we did this one. I did not call that meeting. Therefore, it was improperly called. Hence the decision by myself to call for the ratification, backed up by the mayor and the attorney after a conference call between he and David and Robin and I. So as the mayor mentioned, this tonight is just to ratify the action that's already been taken. Ron and I were not present. We did not vote. Those other previous votes are null and void. So we're kind of going over it again. Most of you received this, the package information electronically before the previous meeting. Robin, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think any of it's changed, has it?
No.
Okay, but it's also what we're discussing tonight is what you received in person from Robin Tuesday night at the the regular meeting. So that said, Robin, we have no more citizens' comments.
Not at this time, no.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 4. Item 4 is to ratify the action to approve the performance agreement by and between Gun Barrel City Economic Development Corporation and YNS Services, LLC for the formation of Pier 334 LLC and the redevelopment of Big Chief Landing. May I have a motion, please? You don't have to read the whole thing. I just need a motion to approve the performance agreement.
Bond, I'll make a motion that we approve the ratified motion agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. Do I have a second?
Second, Johannes.
I have a second from Ms. Johannes. Any discussion?
Mr. President, Mr. Bond, did you say that you made the motion to ratify the performance agreement?
Basically, I'm saying that we're accepting the ratified agreement, what we voted on last Friday.
It's not a ratified. Let me clarify. Good point, Mr. Mayor. This is not a ratified agreement. This is a ratified action to correct a previous vote that was taken at an improperly called meeting. So the motion would be simply to approve the performance agreement.
Oh, okay. Bond, I make a motion that we approve the motion, the performance agreement. My brain and mouth aren't working together.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. Ms. Johannes, do you second that motion?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I want to say, I want to make some comments here. When I come into this to listen this year, felt like that I was in left field, understanding all this. The council and some of the board not having the whole board there whenever a decision of this big of impact to the city should have been 100% of the board and the EDC too. Should have been whenever something this big takes place, needs to be there as a whole, not just a 50-20 group. After talking to different council people over this project and all, I do see a lot of great stuff probably will come out. I'm hoping. There are some stuff there too that I have still questions over, which I think that could have been brought forward a lot better and ironed out a lot better if we'd had more communication between the board and council and the director. And some of this stuff that's took place in the past that's took us to get to where we're at right now could have probably been taken care of a lot easier than it is been done. So I just to make a point of that. But as far as this is a project, I'm 100% behind it. The prior EDC and council that bought this property down there years ago wanted to see something happen down there. And now something's actually coming forward to really make something happen on that end. And I'm hoping and that everything falls into place, that we can see it and make sure everything's done up to the speed that the city and all the people will really enjoy this.
Thank you, Mr. Wyrick. I'm going to interrupt here. Mr. Kroll has joined us. Brian, thank you for joining. I'm going to count you present. Though you were not required for a quorum, we had a quorum without you, but I'm going to add you in as far as attendance. Mr. Kroll, we have a motion and a second to approve the performance agreement, basically the same thing that you guys went through in the last Friday meeting when Ron and I weren't there. Right. So that's where we are. We're in the midst of discussion on that performance agreement approval.
I just want to say one thing. I want to make sure that nobody, I don't want to, because I'm a newbie here. I don't want anybody to think in any way that I was trying to do. I was just doing what I was told. I didn't know that we were going by any particular bylaws, or I wouldn't have taken part in that meeting. So I didn't want anybody to think anything wrong about that or wrong about me being a part of any of that. I'm not, listen, I'm just kind of still getting my feet wet.
I understand that. I think the board understands that. That was just a technicality. The proposed 2021 bylaws allow the executive director to call a special meeting. They have not been approved yet. So we're under 2019 and it takes the president and 2 board members, but not a big deal. Everybody understands. Not everybody knows everything. I appreciate that comment. Do we have further discussion on this motion?
Mr. President, if I may make a comment
Sure.
to Mr. Wyrick's comment. I've not received any questions from Mr. Wyrick or any other board members on this agenda item. The meetings were 100% legally called. If people didn't show up, there's not a lot we can do about that, but there were quorums and that's all that's required. And all parties from both council and EDC were present for the MOU. So I think we're good in that sense. So I just want to make that clear that everyone was notified of the meeting and everyone was invited to the meetings. So
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do we have further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to vote. Mr. Kroll, we're voting. I'm calling for the vote in alphabetical order. We're voting to approve the performance agreement by and between the Gun Barrel City EDC and YNS Services for the formation of Pier 334 LLC and the redevelopment of Big Chief Landing. Mr. Bond, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Collard is still not with us. Mr. Kroll?
Yes.
Ms. Johannes?
Yes.
Mr. Wyrick,
Yes.
and Mr. Lawrence votes yes. It's unanimously approved. Thank you. We'll move on to item 5. Again, this is a ratify action due to the previous meeting. Everything is exactly the same. So I will entertain a motion on the resolution approving a loan of the Gun Barrel City Economic Development Corporation with Government Capital Corporation to finance land acquisition in the principal amount not to exceed $500,000 and all matters related thereto. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept item, is this item number 5 on our agenda, correct?
Yeah, yes, it is.
As it is written on the agenda. I'm not sure that I'm gonna quote all that exactly like it is, and I'm not where I can look at it because I'm driving.
Understand. Do I have a second?
Bond second.
Okay, motion by Johannes and second by Bond. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to vote. Mr. Bond,
Yes.
Ms. Collard is absent. Mr. Kroll,
Kroll, yes.
Mr. Johannes,
Yes.
Mr. Wyrick,
Yes.
and Mr. Lawrence, yes. That motion passes. This concludes the business of this special meeting, August 12th, 2021. Thank you all for your time, comments, and attendance. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion is adjourned.
We have a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you, folks.
Oh, have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.